David, thank you for joining me today on Pop Culture Unplugged.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Exciting times, my friend. Man. I got notes all over the place, so we'll jump all over the place too. Let's jump on with the 90's con first, man. How was your experience? I remember you guys announced it months ago on the podcast that you were hoping to be on it, then you guys were announced. How was that experience for you guys?
It was such a fun weekend. I mean, I always knew these type of conventions existed, but I never participated. And my Sabrina cast had done it a few years, and they said, "This is great. Like, this is one you have to go to." And then they invited our Hey Dude cast there, and because Christine and I have this '90s podcast, it just seemed really the perfect time to try this out. And I had two casts there. I had the Sabrina cast and the Hey Dude cast, who now are all like best friends. And it was just like a love fest all weekend.
Now, was this your first con experience ever?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that feel as a first time guest doing a con also?
Well, everyone told me that this '90s con is so well organized. It's a company called That's For Entertainment
Yeah.
that throws them. And I mean, if I had to go back to my hotel room for a few minutes or go to the bathroom, I had people walking me there, walking me back. There were two girls that were amazing working my booth. There was, professional photography sessions. There were panels that we went on in front of an audience. It was great, and then we had dinners with both my casts on Saturday night all together. It must have been like 10 or 12 of us, and it was really such a beautiful weekend.
Yeah. I had Christine Lakin on the show. I've had her twice already, but I had her on before the 90's con too, and she loved it when she got announced for it. She was telling me it's like pretty much like a high school reunion slash. It felt like we never went apart from each other working all those years.
Yeah, that's funny because we had Stacy Keenan on our podcast a few weeks ago, and I had done an episode of Step by Step where I played her, boyfriend or whatever. And yeah, we all on the podcast, I told her that what I remember from doing Step by Step was that I was so nervous, right? It was one of my first jobs,
Yeah.
that they all seemed so calm and cool. And I said, Patrick Duffy came to the note session the night of the taping in a robe and slippers. That's how cool he was. And I was like terrified. And then I saw Patrick Duffy came up to me. He goes, "Did you tell people I wore a robe around the set, Step by Step?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I just was trying to say, how calm you guys were."
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like, you know, Full House people. Yeah, so many people that we've known for over the years, especially my Sabrina cast and my Hey Dude cast, all reuniting. It was really so much fun.
Amazing, amazing. So let's jump a little bit into your career now. So, you grew up in New York. Dad was a lawyer. Your mom was a therapist. Like, how did you go out of that loop to go into acting? What made you get into the acting world?
I kind of like quietly started doing theater
Okay.
when I was in seventh grade. Um, got into a local production called By Audition Only of um, a a writer who was trying to workshop his show for to go off Broadway, and I just love the camaraderie. I love being on stage, and I got an agent and manager from that show, and then would just like all through high school, start eighth, ninth, 10th grade, I would go straight from my school to the train station into the city and run around on auditions. And I had a bunch of friends who were doing the same, and we'd meet each other, we'd meet up and grab food, and it was so much fun. That just the auditioning process for me was so fun.
How old were you when you made the big jump from New York to LA?
Well, I did Hey Dude. It was the second half of my junior year of high school. I was in
Oh,
Tucson,
wow.
and then we came home for the summer. We went back in like September, October through the holidays, and then I had auditioned for an NBC show called A Family for Joe,
Okay.
which is the oddest sitcom ever made, probably. Robert Mitchum, starring in a half-hour comedy as our grandfather. Juliette Lewis and Ben Savage played my siblings. And so I left Hey Dude and moved to LA from Tucson to do this show that it got canceled after 13 episodes. And then I called the Hey Dude people and begged them if I could come back. And they were like, yeah, come back. So I moved back to Tucson. And then once Hey Dude ended, I think 91, I officially moved to LA.
Yeah, you were talking about that the show when you had Will on. You guys were talking about Ben Savage, working with him and everything. A couple episodes ago, also.
Yeah, I love Ben. I love their whole family. You know, we were tight when we worked together, and you know, Fred was on the Wonder Years at the time and was just doing such amazing work. And they were like just a regular Chicago family. I think, you know, their parents had they were smart professionals, but they weren't like a showbiz fam.
Through all the years of your acting, you know, with Hey Dude, you know, you mentioned Sabrina, even Blossom, you were on the what drew you to like these roles, and how do you think it made you like impacted your career more and more throughout the 90s?
Well, um, I've had a lot of success kind of aligning myself with really powerful leading girls or women. You know, I Blossom's boyfriend, Sabrina's boyfriend. Um, Throughout my life, that's kind of been like a theme. You know, even my wife, and just really trying to be support and get support from really powerful, talented women. Um, but yeah, Blossom was my big first break, the big hit show that, you know, it was Blossom at 8 and Fresh Prince at 8:30
Yeah.
for a number of years, and they were that was my first big one.
Out of those characters that we just named, to like, which one was your favorite that you, to this day you still think about?
My favorite character, well, my favorite experience was doing the movie White Squall, and we just launched a YouTube channel for Hey Dude the 90s called.
Yeah.
So they just launched. I brought my whole Hey Dude cast back. Sorry, my White Squall cast back together, which was Ryan Phillippe, Scott Wolf, Balthazar Getty, Jeremy Sisto, uh, and Jeff Bridges. And I just rewatched that episode that launched on YouTube, and that shoot was 6 months around the world. I mean, everywhere from the Caribbean to London to South Africa, and I don't think they make movies like that anymore. You know, it doesn't happen. And Ridley Scott obviously directed it. So as far as an experience, the making of White Squall was something that I appreciate, and I don't think even happens anymore today. But my favorite character was a movie called A Call to Remember, and it was directed by Jack Bender, who produced and directed most of the series Lost later after this. But Blythe Danner played my mother. Joe Mantegna played my father, and an actor named Kevin Zegers played my younger brother. And it was a family that was a second generation survivors of the Holocaust, living in America, but how much pressure they put on their kids after what they had been through. And it was a true story written by a guy named Max Eisenberg, who had lived. It was his story, and I played him. And I mean, it's obscure. It was made by Stars and Encore, but it's called A Call to Remember. And for me, that's my favorite character I've ever played.
Mm. Would you ever want to jump into something like that again, like a history piece like that?
Yes, but probably more on the writing, producing, directing side.
With the Hey Dude, also like with Ted McGriff, like what do you think is like the he was a popular character. What do you think drew the audience to this character that you played?
Oh man, you know, he was very much like I was at that age, just happy go lucky, charming, and could charm his way out of any situation, and just the confidence you have at 17, and the fun you're having in life, you know? I mean, these kids were out in the most beautiful setting on Dude Ranch, riding horses, messing around with each other, but they always had each other's backs. You know, they were great friendships that I think was the foundation of that show. And I think that's why people love the show.
Everybody keeps talking about reboots. Have you ever talked to Christine about trying to reboot this or trying to just do something with it in the future?
Yeah, we have something. I just yeah, I can't really talk about it, but yeah, it's a reimagined modern version. Yeah.
Yeah. I had to put you on the spot. Sorry.
No, we're on the works right now. Yeah, with
Yeah.
Paramount.
There you go. So as an actor too, like you've been in the entertainment industry in a long time. What do you first of all, like what do you think has changed like from the 90s when you were younger to now in the industry, would you say?
Oh my goodness. So much. I mean, in the 90s, people watched collectively the same content together, right? I mean, even Hey Dude, you know, Christine and I talk about, we didn't know how many people were watching, but like Nickelodeon in the early 90s was like Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, all in one. It was like the kids owned that channel, and they all watched it together. And the same with grown-ups too. It was like, you know, there, like with Blossom, I don't know, maybe it got like 30 million viewers every week.
Mhm.
And now and you had to wait. You had to wait till Monday at 8 p.m. to watch. Now it's like people just binging stuff, and they're also distracted by a lot of other things between video games and social media. There's not as many people watching our shows. So it's harder to find an audience. So like a hit show today maybe has 2 or 3 million viewers, like a really hit show.
Mhm.
Whereas back then it was more of a collective experience. People waited till Monday night at 8 o'clock, and they all watched at the same time, and they sat through the commercials.
Yeah. It's funny. You're a few years older than me. I'm about to be 47 in July. And you're like, what are you, 48, 49 around there?
I'm 51.
So yeah, and I had my kids late in my age. I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. And I always try to get them to watch the old stuff that we grew up with. Did you ever do that with your kids growing up or raising them?
Um, yeah, my kids are aware of, you know, Sabrina and Blossom and Hey Dude. But they are the stuff that they watch is a lot darker.
Okay.
You know, Riverdale or Pretty Little Liars. I don't know what shows they're into, but it all seems to be like very dark. You know, like
Mm,
a lot of lying and backstabbing and maybe murder. And I think they're not as attuned to, you know, the kind of innocent stuff that we watch. You know, like
mm.
uh, yeah, we just had Candace Cameron on, and I was telling her Growing Pains was like my favorite show. My goal
Yeah.
was to be Kirk Cameron, you know, or Family Ties. And I don't know if they would hold up with my kids. I've never
Mm.
shown them, you know, the sitcoms that I grew up with.
Yeah. It's funny you said Growing Pains. I just rewatched the whole series by myself while my kids were doing other things. It took me a little while. It took me about like 6 months. I just rewatched every episode. For me, it still holds. The show still
Really?
holds.
Oh, dude, I used to record Growing Pains on VCR tapes,
VCR. Yeah.
and I probably watched each episode multiple times. I would just like was fascinated with that character, which was also like Ted McGriff, like a charming young guy who could just talk his way out of anything, but was just loving life,
Mm.
you know, with a family that loved him and knew supported him. I don't know. Yeah, that show really clicked with me.
Did you ever get a chance to meet Kirk?
No, I never did, but I did a movie with Candace,
Yeah.
and we're now friends again because she was on our podcast, so we've reconnected. But no, I told her my goal in life was to be to be your brother.
I think every actor at that point, that's what they wanted.
Yeah, he was the greatest.
Or Michael J. Fox, like you mentioned.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you've also did a few a few guest appearances on show too, like 90210 and Melrose Place. Like, what did you think of those type of shows back then? Do you think those type of shows still hold now?
Oh yeah. 90210 is iconic. I mean, that was I did those first like summer episodes where the show blew up, and like after we shot them, uh, Luke and Jason and Shannon were on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine like a month later. I was like, what is going on here? But uh, the show was so well written. You know, I played a character who wasn't sure if he was gay or not in high school, and he was dating Jenny Garth's character, Kelly. And back then, you didn't really write about that. It wasn't like, you know, now it's just normal storyline. No one would care. But back then, it was bold, and the cast was amazing. Luke Perry was a very close friend of mine who welcomed me onto that set so graciously, and I'm friends with all of them to this day. I only have my podcast because Jenny and Tori had me on a few times to recap my episodes on their 90210 OMG podcast. And I became friendly with their producer, Amy, and we talked about what we could do together. And so, yeah, Jenny and Tori are the reason that I even have a podcast.
Mm. Yeah, I don't. It's like I said, I'm excited about the podcast. I was just on looking to see who your latest drop was, and it was Skeet Ulrich, and I had him on last year. What another great guest, great person.
Oh my God, he was great, man. Yeah, he had some amazing stories about NYU, and his teachers at NYU were David Mamet and William H. Macy.
Oh wow.
Can you imagine?
Oh, no. I'll have to. That's on my next listen because I try to listen to your podcast every week. When I was doing some research last night on you too, there's a quote that I wrote down. I want to read to you. This is what people have said about about you. You ready? They said those who have worked with you often praise your profession, commitment, and dedication to your craft. What do you think of that quote?
Who said that?
I don't know. I even tried to look for that after I saw it on a different website, so I wrote it down just so I could read it to you.
Well, I'll tell you this, that the people that I have worked with over the years, I'm still very close with. When I ask them to show up for me, or I bring them a project or something to work on,
Yeah.
they pick up the phone, or they're like, "We're here for you." So I think, yeah, that says a lot. The way you conduct yourself over 30 years in your business, it shows it shows in the way that you're still close with all the people you've worked with. Like Graham Yost, who is the head writer on Hey Dude, and I are working on something. Christine and I have a podcast together. Melissa and I are also in business together, and we just all work together at 90's. I mean, I could go anyone that I've worked with. I feel like I could pick up the phone and they'll answer the phone and be like, what can we do together?" And not everyone, yeah, it's just so your audience knows, not everyone is like that. There are people that conduct themselves in a way that, you know, they become alienated. But I don't understand that behavior. It was just I just acted the way that I grew up.
Do you feel like networking is a huge thing for you, and you always like that if you do somebody a favor someday, you're hoping they will help you out?
No,
No.
no, but I will do a favor for anyone that I love, that I'm close with, for that reason alone. And I feel like
Mm,
same way. I'm not going to do a favor for someone expecting that I'm going to call on them someday for a
yeah.
favor. But you know, the people that you're close with, you show up for.
Yeah. So let's talk a little about the podcast now too. First of all, like how did you and Chris? You mentioned that you were on the Jenny Garth podcast, and that kind of gave you an idea to start your own. How did you decide you wanted to do it with Christine?
Well, I asked Amy Sugarman if we could do a look back on a decade, right? I didn't want to pick one of my shows.
Yeah.
It just wasn't my thing to go recap every episode. And I thought, looking back on the 90's decade, which I know people our age are nostalgic for, and people my kids' age are kind of fascinated with, would give us endless amount of guests.
Mm.
And Amy said, "You know what? You need a female co-host." This is what she thought. And she said, "Give me a list of female co-hosts." And I wrote down a bunch of names, and she immediately said, "Christine Taylor, if you get her, we have a show. And then, yeah, I called Christine like 5 times, emailed her, texted her. She thought somebody died or something. I'm like, listen, we have this opportunity. Would you want to do this with me? And it was the right time in her life. And so it's been amazing working with her again.
Who's been your favorite guest you've had so far? And is there somebody that you kind of hope you get down the road that you're trying every day, trying to get them on?
I don't think I could. Well, next week we have something really insane going on, but I can't tell you, but you'll see, we're doing it next. Well, we're shooting it next week.
Okay.
It'll drop, I think, on the 22nd, but I can't say about that. But like, I mean, Jeff Bridges and Ben Stiller were like, amazing. I mean, especially Christine interviewing her husband.
Yeah.
She found out things about him that she had never known. But sometimes the guests that you least expect to be the most fascinating are the most amazing interviews. First of all, Bonnie Hunt is one of my favorite people in the world. I mean, her story about working at the cancer unit at Chicago Med and running on her lunch break to audition for Rain Man, and being in Second City at the same time and bringing the Second City troupe down to the cancer unit to entertain the patients. Like, sometimes you meet people that you're like, my gosh, you're more than an entertainer. You're a fascinating person. And a couple weeks ago, we had the Nelson brothers, Matthew and Gunnar Nelson.
Yeah.
And I knew that they had a big family, but their dad was Ricky Nelson. Their grandparents were Ozzie and Harriet. Their family's in the Smithsonian. And, they tell the story of that Bob Dylan was crashing out on their living room couch most nights. And George Harrison lived next door, was coming over for breakfast every day. And their babysitter was Mama Cass from the Mama and the Papas. That's the stuff. That's the reason I love doing the podcast. Because I would never, I'd look at Matthew and Gunnar Nelson and say, yeah, I like their music in the 90s, but what am I going to talk to them about?
Right.
And then they drop these amazing stories on it.
How much like studying do you do for the certain guests that you have come on? How much time do you spend, you think?
Well, one of our producers, Lorraine, gives us a rundown, and she does a lot of research. So like, it's everything from their whole history to thought starters, and then if I see something on her with her work, then I'll dive in and listen to the song or watch an old episode of something or watch a movie. But I guess as much as we need, I think, to have a thoughtful interview is what I do.
What's next for you now? I know you've been working behind the scenes also on stuff, but like, what's next for you? Any projects you're allowed to tell us about other than the podcast guests?
There's nothing I can talk about right now, but our business is it's in a standstill right now. But I have several projects with great writers and actors that we are actively shopping around. And yeah, but to get something, I would only talk about something once it's like getting made or being released. Right. And yeah, I have nothing that's coming out right now, but a lot that we're shopping around. Amazing.
David, how can the viewers and the listeners find you on social media to keep up with you with future projects, the podcast, or anything else you got going on?
I'm at David Lascher, and the podcast is at Hey Dude, the 90's Called. And we did just launch a YouTube channel. iHeart launched us on YouTube. So now you can see, I mean, there's over 60 episodes of some of the most amazing guests, all on video. So on YouTube, look for Hey Dude, the 90's Called.
Amazing. David, I want to thank you for giving me a few minutes today. Let's get you back on soon with future projects.
Anytime, buddy. Nice to talk to you.
You too.